Hey folks, David Stewart here. I'm tired of deconstruction. I'm tired of deconstruction in art. So this is something that just recently I've had a lot of people, hitting me in the comments or talking to me on Twitter. Oh, you got to check out The Boys. It's this great deconstruction of the superhero genre. I watched the last Spider-Man animated movie. What's it called? Into the Spider-Verse. This is a deconstruction of Spider-Man. Somebody says you got to see Brightburn. It's a deconstruction of the Superman origin. I'm tired of deconstructions. Deconstructions are actually very old. So the idea of deconstruction really it's a postmodern idea. And the idea of deconstruction is to eliminate the meaning of whatever you're deconstructing. So when you deconstruct something, you just look at it from a perspective where the original meaning behind it gets destroyed. So if you're deconstructing a superhero genre, which I think The Boys does, I haven't watched it and I don't really have a plan to watch it. If you think it's good, leave me a comment and tell me why you think it's good. Same thing with something like Steelheart, which was a Brandon Sanderson book that was kind of like this. Oh, the superheroes are bad guys. So we're going to deconstruct it so that the superheroes aren't virtuous. They're actually bad guys. Well, those are called supervillains. It's just, you're making a supervillain show. Woo! The Watchmen was a deconstruction of superheroes. And as some friends have pointed out, including John Della Rose, you can only deconstruct something once. So once it's been deconstructed, that's the end of it. You can only really do that one time, and then it's old and it's done and it's boring. I've read deconstructions of fantasy, and usually deconstructions of fantasy become rather boring very quickly. The exception probably being the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant, which I've been talking about recently on the show, simply because while it's a deconstruction, it's actually highly original in and of itself and actually does a lot of new and original and interesting things in fantasy. It just kind of uses deconstruction as a vehicle to tell a good story. It's kind of a weird thing. It's the opposite of what you expect. Usually deconstructions are not there to tell a good story. It's to destroy the quality of a pre-existing story. So the other thing about deconstructions is they're not original. Original would be new plot points, new characters doing new, interesting activities, rather than looking at something that somebody has already seen and then presenting them to it in a way that makes the meaning of the original be subverted or be changed or be rendered meaningless or nihilistic. So deconstructions tend to be nihilistic, which most postmodern things tend towards nihilism anyway. So they're not particularly original. The other problem with them is that they rely on a previously established and previously understood set of things. Similar to parody. Parody is actually a form of deconstruction. But parody is there to amuse and to laugh, not necessarily to make something without meaning, but to make fun of something. So Spaceballs to Star Wars. Spaceballs is kind of a spoof on Star Wars and a lot of the 70s and 80s sci-fi and space opera of the time. It's there to poke fun of, it's there to reference, it's there to have fun with those ideas, not necessarily to take those ideas and say, well, see how stupid and pointless and ridiculous these are. This is why people hated The Last Jedi. The Last Jedi was kind of a deconstruction of Star Wars. It was your Jedi Master is a pathetic old man instead of the hero of the galaxy who saved his father, risked everything to save his father and destroy the Emperor, and who blew up the Death Star. It's a complete inversion of that. So through inversion, you create deconstruction. So when you invert something, it's kind of like matter and antimatter. You're trying to destroy the meaning. What's so interesting about Last Jedi is that it's a deconstruction within the franchise itself. It's not a deconstruction like The Watchmen. The Watchmen is a deconstruction, but with new characters. You have, instead of having Batman, you have Night Owl, right? So you have new characters that you're using kind of previously established connections to other characters and understandings of the genre. You're using those pre-existing prejudices, pre-existing tastes to deconstruct the genre. Last Jedi was so interesting because it was actually a Star Wars movie. Due to the magic of corporate IP, it was a Star Wars movie. So within the genre itself, you can destroy the meaning of what came before it. And frankly, I think it's rather offensive to do that. You can deconstruct things, and I think deconstruction can be interesting on its own if you do it like one time. But to do it within the franchise itself, I think is very disrespectful to fans, and also just disrespectful to artists who came before you. So if you're hired to do a sequel to a book, and your sequel to that book is a book about how the previous book was stupid and ridiculous, that's a really unkind thing to do to the artist who worked on the previous book or the previous movie, whatever the medium happens to be. And this is something that I see over and over again in comics, in movies, in books, is deconstructions of things within the same franchise. When you deconstruct Spider-Man, if you deconstruct Spider-Pig, okay, we get that it's not really Spider-Man, but if it's an official Spider-Man comic and you're deconstructing the hero of Spider-Man, that's a rather it's kind of a thumb in your nose at the artists who came before, who worked on actually creating a likable and heroic character in the person of Spider-Man. So yeah, I'm tired of deconstructions. I'm not particularly interested in this point in time. What I'm interested in is new and original things, takes on things which I haven't seen or heard before, or which I find really, really new or original or interesting or thought-provoking. It's hard to be original. Originality is an extremely difficult thing to chase down. It's even difficult to create simple originality, where like you're synthesizing two things together to create something new. It seems like people are even unwilling to do that. You know, they could do, it's like, let's take Mage College and Demon Hunters. Psh, new thing, right? You feel free to write that book, guys, or make a comic out of that. We're not even doing that anymore. We're just doing the same thing that's come before, but deconstructing it. I'm a little bit tired of that, and I'm not super interested in it. It is surprising to me how long the postmodern has seemed to carry on, much longer than I thought it would, without something else replacing it. But here we go. That's it. So let me know what you think down below about deconstruction. Are you tired of all these deconstructions of things that came before? Would you like something new and original, or do you find deconstructing interesting still? Because one thing that I think is that in the visual mediums, movies and TV, deconstruction is still somewhat new, whereas in literature, it's very old. It's very old in literature, and it's very old in visual art, but it might be somewhat new in movies. So anyway, let me know what you think down below, and I'll see you guys next time.